Hi, everyone. My name is Hallie Caldwell, and I work at Quad Education. Welcome to our webinar, where we're going to talk about everything you need to know about deferred college applications. We have two fantastic consultants that work with Quad here today, and I'll have them introduce themselves in just a second, but we'll give you a quick intro on Quad Education first. We are an admissions consulting company that helps students and families prepare for the college application process, from everything from starting to build your college candidacy when you are beginning high school, to helping you decide what schools to apply to, writing your essays, getting letters of recommendation, taking the SAT, ACT, submitting applications. Basically, every part of the college application process we're here to help with. All right. So today we have Dan and Darryl here with us. Dan, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. So I'm Dan. I'm a two-time graduate of Stanford, and I love working with incoming college students on their applications. It's such an exciting time. So just super pumped for you. And this is a cool topic too, very timely this time of year. So excited to dig into it. Awesome.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for being here. Darryl, can you give us a little background on yourself?
Sure. Good day. My name is Darryl Tiggle, and I'm one of Quad's admissions consultants. For a long time, I worked in college admissions. I'm a graduate of Union College, where I worked for a long time prior to moving on to Tufts University, where I worked in admissions there as well. And for many years, worked as a director of college counseling, as the director of college counseling at an independent school in Baltimore.
Great. Thanks so much, Darryl. I also just want to say that we're going to have a Q&A session at the end of this. So if any questions pop up during the webinar, feel free to pop them in the Q&A chat box, and we'll get to those at the end. So let's talk a little bit about what we'll cover today. So we just introduced ourselves, but we'll talk about what it means to have a deferred college application, some reasons your application might be deferred, and then what to do, how to handle a deferred application, steps you can take to give yourself a good chance at acceptance. And then we'll go into a Q&A. So let's dive in.
All right.
What is a deferred college application?
All right.
Darryl, you want to take us away?
I want me to dive in. Dan, let them know.
Sure. I'll jump in. So, I mean, first, if you're in this situation, the first thing is, I would still give like a soft congratulations. The first thing to know is that it wasn't rejected, right? So when you apply to a college early, your application gets basically just three choices. It's either accepted right away, it's rejected right away, or it's in this deferred category. So if it is deferred, you're in this kind of like limbo land for a little while, but it means that they didn't reject it. It means they saw promise. And so you should take some encouragement from that and feel pretty good about that. It usually means they want to look at it again with a broader applicant pool as they try to put together a balanced class. But you were still pretty competitive, and you should still feel good about that. And there are some things you can do to up your chances potentially, and also definitely want to make sure you don't put all your eggs in that basket since it wasn't accepted, and kind of diversify the colleges you're applying to. How'd I do, Darryl?
Excellent. And I think the leading with the congratulations. The game is not over yet. When you're deferred, it's a continuation of your journey. I like that. Excellent.
Great, thank you. Let's talk about some reasons you might have had a deferred application.
And what I tell students is always don't overthink or overfret it, right? One of the things, the main thing colleges are doing is enrollment management, right? And this is one of the applicant pools they're enrolling, they're managing. So you may be deferred to limited space, right? At top schools, at any type of select schools. Some schools may defer all early decision, maybe a majority of their early applicants who aren't immediately accepted, right? The admissions committee wants to see you at regular. So sometimes a student who might be deferred at early action or early decision, the college again sees promise in that student. They just want to see continued academic prowess. They want to see the next set of work from that child and then deliver the good news later. They might need more time to review all the applications they receive, right? One of the things that colleges do is they have predictive models, and we know a lot of things about predictions. Sometimes you're more popular, right, than you plan, and sometimes when that happens at early action, colleges kind of have a little wiggle room, maybe to defer some students and give themselves some more time. Colleges want to build a well-rounded class, so I always tell my students, look, you're the first group of students they're seeing. They're going to see a bunch of other, talented applicants thereafter. They'd like to see you in the context of the entire pool. So often they want to see the entire applicant pool so they can make sure they're admitting a well-rounded class. And just the overall sort of catch-all, your application might need a little boost, might need grades, might need a call, might need a letter, right? There's a little something it'll need to get pushed over the admit edge.
Great, thanks for that overview. Dan, do you have anything else to add to this?
No, I think that was pretty comprehensive, and I think these are all good examples, good reasons to consider, and you don't know the reasons, right? And so we'll talk through some strategies to kind of cover your bases on some of these different scenarios.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then we should specify here that if your application is deferred, it does not mean you are rejected from the school, and you still have a good chance at acceptance.
Absolutely.
Yeah, take that as like an extra boost. Don't let it make you feel deflated or discouraged. Like, it's good, right? You didn't get rejected right away. Like, that's good. You've got a good fighting chance at that school, and that should give you more confidence for your other applications too.
Great. So what's next? What do you do if you get deferred from a university?
There's a lot of next steps. So I tell my students, and this is at the beginning of the process, I go, let's have a plan A, B, and C. Let's launch all those plans at the same time. So as we need them, right, we can enact each. So reevaluate your list, right? Look at the schools that have not yet sent you a decision, right? And think about your approach to how you might apply to them and the strategy that you'll apply. Identify your top remaining schools, not disregarding, but just sort of taking it out of the immediate consideration of the schools that you're looking at, because you've already gotten a decision from them. So let's focus in on the places that still remain, because you will still have to put a significant and an earnest effort into getting to those schools, and then put more work into finishing your regular decision applications before the deadline, right? One of the things I say to students is don't think about your regular decision applications as consolation applications. I'd say somewhere between many to most students go to schools where they're admitted regular decision. One of the things I like about early action is that you might be fortunate enough to get an early gift of admission, and almost every child I've ever seen has taken that gift of admission and held it until the spring when they receive their other gifts of admission. So really give a good shot at your regular decision applications and prioritize them as desirable options for you.
Yeah, I would second that. And I mean, if you did go with an early decision application, I would just pat you on the back. I think that's awesome. I think one of the things it does for you, it gets you in that mindset early, and you put your application in, and you can take learnings and from that, and you're all the more prepared for all these regular application schools. So you're ahead of the game, I would say. So you should feel really good about that.
True.
So one of the other things we can do is look at ways to demonstrate continued interest. I think that's on our next slide here. So this is Darryl covered this, okay, diversify, look at these other applications, put your best foot forward on all of those, and that's great. But you're not done with the school that gave you this deferral decision. And there are things you can do. It's not, none of these things is a slam dunk. I don't know that anything is a slam dunk in your college application process, but all these things can help. So there is, the National Association for College Admissions Counseling found that, 13 to 14% or so of colleges thought that demonstrated interest was a considerably important part. And then there was another 25 or so percent that said it was moderately important. So it's not more than 50%, but it's, that adds up to 40% or so. And that say they're willing to admit that it matters. And my guess is that others that don't admit it, it still makes a little bit of a difference. So what can you do to demonstrate that interest? So you can write a letter of continued interest, and I think that's great. You can do it in an email. Email may be just fine. You got to figure out who to send it to, and tease it out whether the college is kind of open to that. And then if you're in that letter, what you want to do is you want to really demonstrate that interest. And if you have ways to do that, like personal experiences with the school, why that school matters to you, why you want to have specific things you can talk to. So if you've done a campus visit, that's a great thing to talk to. If you've talked to alumni or students, that's a great thing to talk to. If there's something like recent that the college has, like some kind of award or some kind of recognition or some kind of like breakthrough research or something that you can reference, that's awesome too. Anything that shows that like they're not just another school to you, they're one that you really care about. If that comes through, that can move the needle and be the difference if you're kind of one of those applications on the fence.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the continued interest is something I always tell my students to do, because they've kind of in a pretty earnest way from the front end said, I'm interested enough in you to make it one of my first applications, or as an early decision applicant, the place that I most want to go. So they do want to know that your interest remains, and to, I think, communicate what we've said before, that you've taken it not as discouragement, but as encouragement to continue pursuing admissions at that school.
I do know a couple like anecdotal stories where people have like gone the extra mile to do that, and they believe that it made all the difference for them. So just some anecdotal stories of like that extra effort can make a difference.
Oh, and one thing I failed to mention, often when you're deferred, they will give you some action items in your portal. So make sure you're remaining vigilant about checking emails and visiting your portal to find out if there's things that they're asking you to do that are standard operating procedure for deferred students.
Good point. Yeah, being responsive.
Great tips.
All right. And then this letter of continued interest. What is it? Right, and pretty straightforward. You want to let them know that you continue to be interested, and start with a greeting. Sort of make it personal, make it triumphant. That you're excited to communicate with them. Thank them for their time and consideration. Right, lead with positivity. Launch into demonstrating your interest. And I think the thing you want to make sure that you're communicating is that, hey, you all give me the opportunity to attend, I'm coming. Right. So I think being able to say to them, if admitted, and if that's true, that you would like to enroll, explain why you love your school and how the acceptance would contribute to the campus and how you would contribute to the campus and your goals. Being able to articulate why that specific place is compelling you in a way that they know you're talking about them, I think is one of those demonstrated interest types of things, right? If you're explaining things that can only happen there, that are or emblematic of the experience there, that's the kind of interest that shows you've been doing your research and that you can see that it's a good match. Relevant updates about your candidacy. So I always joke with my students, say, end of the day, you kind of just want to say, hey, I'm still here. Hey, I'm still here. Hey, I'm still here. But you do want to be able to give them some substantive information. Maybe you've got a recent set of grades or an award or other things in your life that will add to your brilliance and add to what you'll bring to them. Make that part of the reasons that you'll communicate with them. And I always say, let them know that you'll holler back a little bit later. I'll give you an update later in the process to let you know how I'm doing, and then thank them again as you close.
Gosh, that's good. Just good points. And I love what you were saying, Darryl, about how it's so important to tell them something about the school that can only apply to the school, right? Like they see these things, right? They know if it's a generic thing like that. That's it comes through. And I would say, one, like that's good strategy, but two, think it's not just about like playing the game of getting into the school. You want to make a decision that is really good for you, a good fit. And like some things may look good on paper, but like once you're there, once you experience it, once you're talking to people, once you're visiting the school, you may have a gut feel. And I always tell people, you got to pay attention to that gut feel. Like that is good information for you about whether this is like the sort of community you want to commit to for 4 years. So make sure that it's authentic. Make sure you've done whatever you can to like understand why that school matters to you and what that community means and why it resonates with you. And if you've done that, it almost can't help but come through in, these letters and the way that you talk to people about it.
Those are great points. All right, submitting your mid-year grades.
Yeah, and Darryl made a really good point too about like, making taking the opportunity to tell them you're still there and also bring some substance with it. And so like your mid-year grades is like one great example. So you can send that letter of continued interest, which is great, send it now. And then when your mid-year grades come in and they're great, you can send them a quick note and say, hey, I was so excited about this and I hope it improves my application. I'm really pumped about coming to your school and here's why. And, use it as an opportunity. Likewise, if there's like you can highlight a class rank jump is always like a nice thing to be able to bring to their attention. So use it as an opportunity to double down on your grades. It's good for this application. It's good for your other applications. It's good for you. So win-win-win.
And with the mid-year grades, I kind of, it's in the canon of students and parents asking me, hey, what grades are most important? Is it my junior year, my senior year? And the disappointing answer is all of them are important, right? But in this senior year, this campaign that we're in right now, as of August, my students would ask me, hey, are my quarter grades going to be important? I'm like, yeah, they may or may not be. Your mid-year grades are definitely going to be important, right? So regardless how you apply to college, that's sort of a standard required piece of work because they know that's the first chunk of work they'll have available, especially if you're an early action or early decision applicant whose promise they see the promise in your 9th through 11th grade work. They really want to be assured of their decision to invite you based on the work that you're doing currently. That's probably your most challenging work and kind of gives them an idea of how did they respond to that incentive that we gave them in mid-December. So as always, keep your foot on the pedal for your mid-year grades and all your grades. But mid-year, I'd say if you're a current senior in high school, your mid-year grades are definitely the most important grades that you'll produce in the near future. All right.
Yeah. Can't let that senioritis get to you.
No, maybe in the spring, maybe spring. All right.
That's cool. So another tool kind of in your toolbox as you're kind of playing this waiting game with a deferred application. You could consider sending an additional letter of recommendation. This shouldn't be something to just check the box. It should be something that has substance to it. And I know the type of people that listen to these webinars, like I know you guys are doing all sorts of like cool activities, you're having cool opportunities. You've got additional people who can vouch for you. So think about the teachers and others who have made letters of recommendation. If there's one that's particularly fresh about maybe a recent accomplishment you've achieved or a recent thing that you just feel really good about, that could be an opportunity to also send that to the school. It does a couple things. It takes advantage of this opportunity to show that you've grown, and it again highlights something that maybe is a little bit different. You do have to check with the school, make sure that it's okay to do that. But even asking about that, I would say, is like continuing to show your interest, just asking if they're going to do that. So definitely consider it an option.
And that, I think sort of, clearing with them that they'd like continued, data on you, that continued letter of interest is kind of like the, or additional letter of recommendation is like a continued letter of interest, right? If you are so fortunate to have a teacher or someone who's observed your, academic or personal prowess that might have attended that institution, they might be someone who could write on your behalf and say, given my, experience with Darryl, they seem like the kind of student who would fit into our community. Think about the people that you would ask to have an additional letter of recommendation sent for you, and strategically say, hey, who might be able to, authentically and comprehensively give them a good idea of why that school needs me.
Love that. Such a good idea.
Great. So let's talk about some tips to boost your chances of acceptance after getting deferred from a college, and then we'll go into some Q&As.
All right. All right. So
Yeah,
cool. One was the letter of continued interest. You know, professional tone, right? Giving them a really good understanding that that is a place that you are continuing to stay compelled by.
Yeah, we talked about that continued letter, additional letter of recommendation that shows another side of you. We didn't talk about the standardized tests. We had actually a webinar recently that talked about those, but that could be another data point. If you think you can up those, that's a good chance.
As always, put all your work into your classes until the spring, and try to raise your GPA and rank. But again, know that staying on top of your work. And unfortunately, even through senior year, the end of senior year, they're going to ask for your end of senior year transcript. So let's just do this. Let's do the excellent work we've always done, right? And keep it going. And continue seeking out new experiences, leadership, other ways in which you can continue to develop yourself, but also have things to communicate to your colleges that you may still be, in the mix with. And they may be doing events, right? For students who have been admitted, maybe even for students who might have been deferred. But if there are things that you can attend to get more insight on the school, again, be mindful of staying on top of the communication they're sending to you. Yeah,
love that. So many things that you can do. We've covered a lot of tips here. You have a lot of options right now. You're in a good position. You're in good shape. So consider some of these options, and as Darryl said, I love that. Get your plan A, B, C, and execute them all at once. I think that's kind of a cool way to think about it. But lots for you to think about, and good luck. It's an exciting process, and this is just one step along that journey.
Great. All right, let's dive into some Q&As.
All right.
So if a university asks for a recommendation letter from someone you know personally, who's a good person to ask? And I'll start off by saying we do have a great webinar from a few months ago on our website that talks exclusively about recommendation letters. And I think we can cover this briefly, especially as it pertains to deferred application recommendations.
And I think one of the things to keep in mind is when you ask that person for the letter, let them know that you were deferred. Obviously you would do that, but that you're, making a second attempt at getting your application some sign.
Yeah, really good point. And again, who should we ask is kind of a judgment call around hey, if you were to take a guess at your application or something, if you got any feedback from somebody about an area of growth, and if there's a way to show that, that could be a good opportunity. But really anything that you feel really proud about, you feel you've really shown who you are in the best way, and that's a good person to ask. You don't want them to just say something generic about you. I would say hey, Hallie is really special, and here's why. Anybody who can say that comes through.
I agree. And often, you've gotten in your application teacher recommendations, counselor recommendations, maybe a coach, maybe an instructor in other venues in your life can give insight that wasn't in your application, and that would both provide a new recommendation and maybe a slice of your life that wasn't previously presented in your application.
Love it.
Great, thank you both. Another question we have right now is community volunteering valuable? And also we do have a webinar on extracurricular activities, which this kind of falls under. So feel free to check that out on our site as well. But Dan or Darryl, do you have any thoughts here?
Yeah, it's all good. It's, and hopefully you're doing things that you're passionate about and you're interested in and that are, development for you. Some of the students I work with, it feels like some of these things are checking a box, and that makes me a little bit sad. I understand it. It makes sense, but you want to be doing things that are authentic. Yes, community service, volunteering matters, because as an admissions team, you're trying to bring people in who are going to contribute to the community. The best part of the college experience is is in many cases the people who you're associating with. And that's why they're so careful to put together a class that is balanced, that is full of people who are bringing what they have and giving that back. And so showing that you're doing that in the communities that you're part of right now is a really good signal for them. So definitely something to pay attention to.
Yeah. And the impact that you're making in your community now, that's super good evidence that you're going to make an impact when you get to your college community. So that's something where I say our students, that's where you really demonstrate your brilliance, right? You take tests and you write papers, but the impact that you make in the world, that's really what we want you prepared to do, to go out there and get A's and B's, trust me, but go and make good things happen in the world. And if you're doing that, you absolutely want to tell colleges, this is what I do, this is who I am. I'm ready to do it there.
That's great advice. So the question and answer box is still there, so feel free to keep popping in questions. See, we just got, can examples of your art and music be helpful? I think the answer there is absolutely. Anything that
yes.
makes you should be sharing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
Get it on your social media too. Get your positive creativity out there in the world. That's something it'll be seen, and you can reference it in your application. Yeah, that's awesome.
And follow the colleges on their social media, because almost every admissions office I know now has a colleague or two who is assigned to manage their social media outlet. So see what kind of things they're communicating about, what they're doing, what they're saying, what they're interested in. And that can be things that you're letting them know, hey, following you on whatever you guys follow each other on. I'm not terribly well versed, but I'm following you all. I'm following you.
Yeah, I love that. Another great thing to reference. Yeah, if you can't, we talked about all this stuff about talk to alumni, get out to the school, but that's a great additional point. If you can reference things, you're in tune with what the school's talking about, and that's all great stuff.
I know a lot of schools will have student takeovers, and the students will talk about a day in the life at the school. They'll talk about things that they love, and that can give you a really good insight into the community that's there, and also is something great to bring up. So if you get an email from a department head, should you email them back?
A department head from the college to which you've applied?
Yeah, I'm curious about the context of that.
Yes, you have a department head from the college.
Dan, I'm going to go absolutely on that, aren't you?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I don't know. I don't see why you wouldn't. Cool opportunity. I guess the reason I put myself, the reason I would hesitate is oh my gosh, this person is so influential, and I'm scared, right? And that's okay. I just want to honor that. It's okay to feel scared. That makes sense. But they know you're an incoming freshman. They work with students. You can relax a little bit. If you want to type it up and have a friend or somebody or your counselor look over it with you, that's cool. That's okay. But yeah, lean into that. That's awesome.
Oh, and Dan, brilliant point. The number of meetings I have with my students to write continued letters of interest, that's most of what I do between now and New Year's. They'll come and say, hey, Mr. Tiggle, this is what I'm thinking about saying. Does that sound right? Or Mr. Tiggle, what should I say? So please do reach out to those who you can rely on to help you communicate your message. Go and see people that'll help you sort of make that succinct and effective.
You have a quad education counselor. It's a great resource to use as well.
Super good at that.
Yeah, people like Dan and Darryl are experts in this and have helped students write millions of these.
And I used to, when I worked in admissions, we were a school that was very selective. So we would have students that we'd want to admit. We'd have a lot of them that we'd want to admit, but we'd have to deny 70% of them. You follow me? Right? In that 70%, there were lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of students who we wanted to admit, but we could only admit a certain amount. We had to deny a lot, and then we waitlisted a pretty significant amount. And waitlist is somewhat similar to deferring, right? They're making you, pushing it along a little bit. I used to always sort of envision the waitlist as a college admissions person as the wish list. These are the kids I wish I could admit had we had more spaces to admit them. So again, know that this deferral is not the end of the road. They're trying to find out, I wish I had a little bit more information, to digest, to admit this student. So think about that as you move forward in this process, because college admissions people do want to invite young scholars to their schools. So stay positive and stay in touch with them.
Yeah, such a good point. Yeah, we can apply a lot of these same things, in April or so. And
correct. Yeah.
And we'll also be talking about wait lists just to get a head start on it on later this week. So you can sign up for that webinar as well to prepare yourself just in case.
That was the promo for the wait list.
Exactly. So we have another question here, kind of going back to social media. We have someone that's using their parent social media platform because when they started, they were not yet of age to make their own, cannot be referred to in applications.
I wouldn't stress about this. If you're following with your mom's social media, if you're following the school, like that's good information for you, and you can talk to that in your letter of continued interest. You can talk about that in your interviews if you get interviews. It's a good way to stay in touch. I wouldn't stress about it. If you're able to start your own social media and show a positive presence, I think that's a small beneficial thing to do. But I wouldn't stress about it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to wade out too deep because my social media knowledge is minimal, but that you're following them is the most important. I don't know that they'll follow you. So you're fine using your parents.
Yeah. And you don't need to tell them what your social media handle is. You can just say, I saw this online, was really interested. You don't need to, you don't need to share everything with them there. Another great question here is, do we have any kind of rough estimates or stats for how many students get off the deferred lists in general? And I'm sure it varies on the schools, but in your experience, do you have any thoughts?
It'll vary by school. For those who really do want the information, you can obtain it for the previous year's class to get a gauge on sort of how they work with deferred applicants. But I think in terms of getting data that might be helpful to you, I think the college's resource is probably the best, right? The best resource to work with, and many of them do provide statistics around that. Dan, what is your experience in terms of data around deferred stats?
I've seen anything from around like 50 to 80% of people getting deferred. And again, it depends widely on the school. It depends, Darryl mentioned these like predictive models, and it's could vary year to year from school, but it's sort of in that ballpark. So that's another reason not to like feel too bad. It's like, hey, you're in good company if you're getting deferred.
And I think, like you said, a lot of people who are deferred get in. There's some people that don't, but there's definitely hope's not gone. You have a decent chance there.
And one of the things I try to describe about action and the way in which it works, right? And why deferred students still have a pretty good chance. If you think about the pace of early action, November 1st is the deadline, right? They're probably releasing decisions around mid-December, so they're probably done making decisions by December 1st, right? So in 1 month, they've got to read somewhere between, let's say, 1,000 and 20,000 applications, depending on the school, right? It's going to be, readers to scale, right? The thoroughness that they could apply to that application if they had 3 months to read it is a lot different, right? So a lot of colleges count on the fact that they'll be able to read it more thoughtfully over time than they will be able to read it in that 1 month. So that's also one of the sort of enrollment management ways in which colleges try to manage their early action pool, is because for many of them, those pools are enormous, right? And to give them thorough evaluation, that 1 month time will not allow them to do so, but deferring them and giving them 3 months of evaluation absolutely does.
Good point.
So feel free to keep submitting questions. But in the meantime, Darryl, Dan, do you have any other tips that you would give your students that maybe we didn't cover here today? Any advice or other thoughts about deferred applications? Yeah,
so I think, the remaining, so this is mindset wise, mindset, right? Thinking that you're going to win does not necessarily bring you a win, right? But if you think about losing, you might bring the losing ghost to you. So always stay positive, right? So stay positive, right? And the thing that I think is most important in terms of letting them know, hey, I'm here and I'm going to come to the schools that indeed you want to enroll, articulate that to them. Say, this is my top choice school because of the open curriculum or the core curriculum or the study abroad, priority. Tell them why, and that you will come if admitted. So for the school to which you absolutely want to attend most, I think tell them that in a super easy to digest way.
Yep, that's great. Yeah, I love that. Oh gosh, we talked about a lot of stuff today.
I know we should have taken notes, Dan.
Yeah. Well, I scribbled down a few notes from you, Darryl. You shared so many good ideas. I was like, oh, I want to. This like losing ghost thing. I was like, I don't know, good sports analogy here.
Our coach, that's what my coach used to say.
Yeah.
That you not bring the losing ghost to this locker room.
That's good. Yeah, I like that. I think it's like, yeah, just like, staying positive about it. I know it's a stressful time. I know I'm somebody who had like insecurities as I was going through it. Embrace it. It's part of the growing process, but also, try to find that, like inner confidence of like, hey, I've done this, right? Like I've done great things. I can contribute to community. I'm going to do a great job at the school. Try to find that in you. You can talk to others who believe in you. That's always a good thing to do. But yeah, mindset matters a lot, I think.
That's great.
One other piece of information, if we still have time. In so much as we want you to continue, right, engaging the schools that you've been in deferred to, that you want to attend, we do have to have an on to the next one, mentality as well, so that you're giving these other schools who have not yet given you a decision the same amount of energy and application strength.
Yep, definitely.
I think that's great advice. When I was applying to college, I had a top school that I was like, if I get in, I'm going. Got into that school, decided to wait out before I accepted that acceptance, and got into a different school that I didn't really think that I cared about. Went to visit and fell in love and ended up going to that school. So you might change your mind also, and that's give yourself the time and space for that and put in the effort.
Yeah, such a feel thing. And I think the feeling of fit matters a lot.
Absolutely. So another question here that we have is, will I get a chance to add my accomplishments after the applications are submitted? An example being a competitive math exam is in February, the results come out in March of senior year. How can that be added into the applications, and is that possible?
A couple different ways. Again, make sure you're looking at your portal, because they will absolutely give you ways to submit additional information if they welcome it. If you've already begun to engage, often there will be an admissions representative who's assigned to your part of the world, and they manage your school. There are people that you can send that information to, but absolutely, that updating your information in your application for the schools that accept additional information, they'll make it available to you so you can do it in a seamless way.
Yeah. Second that. Check with the school. Follow their policies.
Is a letter of continued interest an appropriate place for that as well, or if it's kind of a nearer term thing, or should that be done in kind of an additional information if the school accepts it way?
Yeah, you know, if they accept it, my personal decision, I guess, would be to put it in as it comes in before the decision. And then, you know, if they don't accept it, then maybe you can send it as a letter of continuing interest if they waitlist you. Because you're talking about at that time, February, March, you're talking about like, you know, a waitlist kind of decision. What do you do with that? Not a deferral, as we're talking about here.
Fantastic. We'll leave the chat open just for another moment or two if anyone has any additional questions, and we can give you that information. But I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined us this afternoon. Dan and Darryl, it was a pleasure having you both as always.
Likewise.
Yeah, and we'll send out an email early next week with a recording of this webinar to you all. You'll also be able to find it on our website for free. And we have 2 more webinars coming up before the holidays. Feel free to sign up, and we'll be back with more come mid-January.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you all for joining us. Dan, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. Good luck, everyone. You got this. You got these applications.
Yeah. Good luck, everyone. And Quad Education wishes you the best. And feel free to reach out to us as well if you need any help with your next steps. But I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you all for joining.